Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Frenemies. Joined as always by David Swor. I'm DJ Cox. David forgot to wear his red shirt today. Like always, forgets to put on Yankees baseball. Same old, same old.
That's right.
I got my Reds hat on. I do got my Cubs shirt on, so it doesn't really make too much sense, but we're going to talk about the team in the NL Central that scares me more than any of the other teams in the NL Central, the Cincinnati Reds. As a fan of the Cubs, this is probably the scariest team to knock us off for the division title. I'm not too scared, but I'm a little scared of the Reds. So, David, why don't you start us off a little bit and talk about 2019 with the Cincinnati Reds?
So 2019 season started out really slow for the Reds. They had 1 point there right in the beginning where they lost 9 out of 10 games, immediately set them back and pretty much pushed them out of the race for the division. But they had a winning May and ended up the rest of that season from May on with a winning record. And in the midst of that, they also made some interesting moves, had a couple guys bust out that were kind of out of nowhere. Aristides Aquino came up and opened some eyes. They traded for Freddie Galvis. They traded for Trevor Bauer. And, last year, the Reds had a pretty good pitching staff last year. They were fourth in the NL and ERA, but their hitting was terrible. They only batted .244 as a team, 12th in the NL. And there were some really positive signs, but also, DJ, I think there's some things I would be really concerned about if I were a Reds fan. Going into this, we've talked about the Reds, it seems like, several times over our podcast. And every time we kept talking about how good they were. And I do believe the Reds are going to be good. But I'm also really worried about, for instance, Joey Votto. I don't know what's going on there. He's 36 now. And let me just ask you this, DJ. I just got to. If Joey Votto quits today, is he a Hall of Famer?
I'm not even going there.
Come on, that's an honest question.
No.
DJ, come on, man. He dominated 10 years. He won several MVPs. If Joey Votto had played for the Cubs, would Joey Votto be a Hall of Famer right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know. But anyway, as a Reds fan, I have to be concerned a little bit. That's my star. That's my star player. All these teams that end up making it, they have a stud. And Joey Votto has been their stud. Now, maybe it was injuries. I don't know. Maybe it was just playing on a bad team. Maybe he just couldn't get up for it. I don't know. But the Reds are going to need Joey Votto this year. Like I said, they made some really nice moves. Somehow or another they turned Yasiel Puig into Trevor Bauer. That seems like a steal to me. And like I said, Freddie Galvis is a big upgrade over what they had last year. They had an awesome offseason where they added several players that are going to help. And so 2019 maybe not so great for the Reds, but I think it set them up for a really good 2020.
Yeah, so you brought up a lot of good points there. Fourth place in the National League Central last year. 13 guys got over 200 plate appearances, so they used a lot of guys offensively. 14 guys also had over 23 ribbies, so they were well-rounded. Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray were good at 15-8 and 11-8 respectively. Raciel Iglesias, so man, looking back on his season, that was pretty rough, man.
Yeah.
As a closer, he went 3-12 with a 4.16. He still had 34 saves somehow, but man, I don't know, man. I think one of the things that, and we'll get into this a little bit, but if he pitches like that, you better start looking at guys like Amir Garrett at the end of that rotation, or not the rotation, but at the end of the game for closer. And those are some bad numbers. That's a lot of losses for a closer. Team ranked 24 in the MLB in average, 22 in on-base percentage, and 25th in runs. That all surprised me. I thought they were a little bit better than it offensively. I knew that the pitching was a strength. And when you think historically of the Cincinnati Reds, you always go to their offense and think their pitching is just weak most of the time, especially in the last 20 years. And it wasn't the case last year. The ERA was ninth. It was sixth in WHIP. Their starting pitching ERA was ninth. Yeah, and then they were third in Ks per nine, so they were pretty good. And that's not normally what the Reds do. So it was kind of nice to see them turn the page a little bit and start getting some pitching. And that offense just didn't catch up, and it's just seems to be the Reds' problem is that they can't get everything to balance out and become, just great offensively and on the mound. And it seems like one of the others really good and one of the others just really bad. And it happened last year, just not the normal way that it does.
Right.
So,
yeah. Go ahead, man.
So what do you think is the strength, though, of this team when you come into 2020, though?
Well, it's the rotation. Luis Castillo had a bust-out year. Sonny Gray had a bust-out year. And I'm a little worried about Sonny Gray, too, if I'm being honest. He was on the Yankees for a minute. And Sonny Gray's career's just been uneven. He's had a good year several times. There's good ERAs. But look at his win-loss. And, I remember having this conversation with you probably in college, DJ, about, wins. How much should we take into account wins? I think wins is a big stat for a pitcher. And a lot of people will disagree with me on that. But there's something about being a winner. We talked about Randy Johnson going 17-9 and having a 5 ERA with the Yankees one year. There's something about being able to win games, being able to turn it on when you need to turn it on. And I wonder a little bit about Sonny Gray. I don't have his career stats here in front of me, but if I remember right, he's about a 500 pitcher for his career, and that's with some years with some great ERAs. And so I worry a little bit about Sonny Gray, but I can't take it away from him either. He's had some more good years than bad. I think Trevor Bauer will come around. Again, he's proven over time, even though he's a pretty big jerk and a head case, that he is a pretty good pitcher. And so I think he'll come around. I actually like Wade Miley probably better than most. He won, I believe, 14 games last year, and to have a guy like that as your fourth or fifth starter, I think that's pretty good. And so I'm going to go with their rotation.
One of the things I forgot to talk about when we were talking about the Mets is Jacob deGrom won the Cy Young with a 10-9 record.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, jeez, that's just unbelievable to me. He's barely above 500. I mean, his ERA and all that other stuff was killer, but man, come on. We're giving out Cy Young to a guy who won 10 games. I'd never agreed with that. I mean, I understand he pitched awesome, but you've got to still be winning games, man. You can't be losing almost as much as you win and get the Cy Young. That's just, I don't know. Granted, there was a lot of problems there when he won it. I don't get it. You got to have that factor in there. I agree. You got to be winning some ball games. That, to me, was one of the weirdest Cy Young Award wins ever, with a guy with the almost losing record wins a Cy Young. I don't know, man.
A little bit of the problem in the NL is I'm just trying to think back through who the candidates were, because I remember Sonny Gray was and he was in the top 5 last year for Cy Young votes. I don't think there was a whole lot of guys separating themselves. Is that correct?
Kind of wasn't really. I mean, there was a few guys that you could have gone to win it, but I mean, I don't know. That Verlander and Cole in the American League was a very close race for it, and everybody just kept pushing deGrom, and he's won it back to back now, and doesn't really have too much of a winning record as far as the last couple of years with him, and it's very, very weird, to be honest with you, that he pulled that off. And 10-9 and 11-8 were his 2 records that he won the Cy Young with. And granted, he had a 1.70 ERA in one of those, which is dominant. But still, I think that you're right. And just very weird to have a 10-9 record with a 1.70 ERA. I don't know how that happens. Maybe it was Edwin Diaz in the back of that rotation blowing all those games for him back in the bullpen.
Exactly.
I don't know, man, but that's really weird to me how those stats were put up. But anyway, back to the Reds. And, I just want to throw this out there too, man. I think if Trevor Bauer and Joey Votto were in the same room with me, I'd probably punch them both and kick them and do whatever I could. I don't like either of those guys, man. I can't stand him. You could just tell, so arrogant. I just not a fan of either of those guys at all. Trevor Bauer needs to just shut up because he talks way too much, and I don't know who he thinks he is, really, to be honest with you. But I mean, I agree with you a little bit on the rotation. I think that is their strength, and I really do. And that's very hard and very unreal to be thinking that the Reds rotation is a strength. But you just mentioned all the guys, and I couldn't agree with you more. Luis Castillo, man, that guy, he's nasty, and I was more impressed with him than pretty much all the other guys in the rotation last year. And he pitched against Cubs a lot, and man, he has some nasty stuff, and that guy's really good. And I see them I see him as a race, to be honest with you. I think he's their number one. I don't think Sonny Gray's their number one. And I don't think Bauer is either. I think Bauer's probably I almost put Bauer ahead of Sonny Gray, to be honest with you. I think Gray's maybe their three. But whatever way they line it up, and Wade Miley, man, 16-4 last year, like you said, that was an awesome year. Granted, he had the best offense in the world behind him in Houston, but not a bad rotation, man. And I'll take those four guys. That's pretty solid. So I agree with you.
Well, you know who number 5 is? I skipped over it as well. But Anthony DeSclafani, 3.89 ERA last year and 31 starts. And 31 starts, that's a big sample size. Now, he didn't win a lot of games, only 9 wins somehow. Obviously, the Reds couldn't hit. That was probably why. But only 151 hits and 166 innings. And, man, when you're talking about that being your 4 or 5, wow. I mean, that's a good rotation right there.
Yeah, I do like him at the end. You're right. I mean, you didn't bring him up, but if he's your 5 guy, you're in pretty good shape because we've seen some of the 5 guys on a lot of these teams in the National League, and that is not good. They're really bad in the 5th spot, and these guys aren't. So I totally agree with you. I think that 1 through 5 they're pretty solid, and those guys any given night can go out there and get a win for the Reds. So it's time for the offense to step up, man, and I believe they can with the moves they've made. So we'll see, but I'm going to put it on the rotation as a strength, and if this offense can do what I think it can do, these guys are going to be really good. So.
Now, one thing I forgot to mention regarding the rotation, Fangraphs ranks their rotation the 3rd best in baseball.
Wow.
Behind the Rays and Mets. 3rd best rotation in baseball. And At first, that kind of took me back a little bit. I thought, come on, man, 3rd best. But really, if you think about them 1 through 5, I can't think of anybody really any better that's that deep. So it's going to be interesting. Like you said, the Reds got to find a way to hit and to close out games.
Who did you say was number 2?
So it had the Rays number 1 and Nats are 2.
Oh, Nats. I thought you said Mets, and I was like, nah, I don't see. Okay, Nats. That makes total sense. Yeah, I mean, for everything that we've been going through so far, I see it. These guys they're loaded. I honestly, out of these 5, to be honest with you, man, Sonny Gray is a question mark out of them 5. I don't know, man. I just don't got a really good feeling about him. I think he's got the stuff and the potential, but just not sure, man. And how did you feel about him when he was with the Yankees? Because I know they gave up a lot to get him, and I don't know how did you think he produced?
Man, he was tough to watch. He was about a 4 to 5 inning pitcher with the Yankees, and of course it's hard. He's pitching in a league with the DH, which he will be this year as well. He pitched in a small stadium, which he does now as well, and you're pitching with fans who are impatient. And I think the third part's what really got him. Once he started hearing boos, his psyche just started going down, 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 down. And so he made the playoff roster actually that year. And here's how I know that Sonny Gray's not cut out for New York. He had a playoff appearance in relief, and he came in and pitched great, like 2 or 3 shutout innings. And then you come out to the New York media and basically say, I'm back. And it's like, come on, man. You've pretty much sucked all year. We throw you out there in mop-up duty. You pitch 3 shutout innings, and then you come out and announce to the world that I'm back. Now, I don't blame you for having confidence in yourself, but you don't do that kind of junk in New York, man. And Cashman basically made no bones about it. He's a nice guy and a good pitcher, but he's just not cut out to be here. And I just don't know how well he handles pressure. He's obviously got really good stuff, but he would have good stuff for an inning or two with the Yankees, and then he would start nibbling and start walking people, and then a big home run would come. And I'm not a big Sonny Gray fan after having that experience in New York. I worry about him as well. But again, he's obviously got stuff, and so they've got a good pitching coach there. He's proven over time that he's a good guy, so maybe he's found something. The Yankees had made him go away from a curveball and start throwing a slider, and he immediately switched him back to the curve, and he's good again. So maybe that was all he needed. I don't know. But I'm like you, man. I would have some worries about it.
So what do you got for the weakness in this team?
Man, I think it's the bullpen. They've definitely got some guys, and we got to talk about this guy, man. Michael Lorenzen, two-way player. You love you some two-way players. And it's a big advantage. It was a bigger advantage than it is now because, pitchers had to hit. And you know how it is that those managers had to weave through the end of the game, take guys out. You didn't have to do that with Lorenzen. You could just leave him in there and let him pitch and let him hit too. But he hits triple digits. He's going to be their setup man, looks like, going into the year. Iglesias is going to get another chance at closing. And if Iglesias is back to his normal self, then I'm probably not as worried. But they don't really have a whole lot of shutdown guys outside of Lorenzen and possibly Iglesias. The rest of those guys, Amir Garrett, I like him a lot. But he's above average, I would say. Not really what you'd call a lockdown reliever. So the pen has potential, but I think it's the weakest part of this team. It also has the biggest potential to go the opposite direction.
Yeah, looking through that bullpen, and getting Strope too was a little bit of a help for him. Strope kind of, he's hit or miss with the Cubs here the last couple of years. Big part of the 16 team. It drove a lot of Cubs fans nuts there because he was inconsistent towards the end before we got to the Reds. But if he finds his stuff again, man, he's nasty, and that'd be a good addition to them as well. I'm going to go with a weakness, to be honest with you. I'm just going to go with David Bell as their manager and the fact that they're not really playoff tested. This is the problem I'm kind of looking at with this Reds team. I don't doubt that they have a lot of strengths in every part of their lineup. They're loaded with talent, to be honest with you. They've got a ton of it, and if it all comes together and these guys make the playoffs, I mean, are these guys a playoff team? They're ready for that. They're not. Most of the time teams have to go through the playoffs and get beat again, and then before they finally advance to the World Series and get better. These guys haven't made the playoffs, and I don't know how long, to be honest with you, off the top of my head. And it's going to be a problem. And David Bell is going to manage for the first time in the playoffs, I believe, too. And so I don't know, man. I kind of see that as a little bit of a weakness. If they get there, are these guys going to be able to go through with it?
Yeah, I agree, man. That's something I would worry about as well.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about it. I'm not, not totally worried about it, but I do believe that if you're battle tested in the playoffs, and you've had a lot of guys that have gone through it, which these guys don't, and they got some veterans that have done it on other teams, but talking about it as a Cincinnati Reds organization, let's just see if they can do it. That's kind of what I'm a little worried about with them, is making the playoffs and not really knowing what to do, and maybe just being satisfied with getting there is kind of what I'm saying is, we made the playoffs and then kind of just falling out after that. So we'll see. They could do a bunch of different things here. So hopefully that's not what they do. How about the best case scenario for this team?
The best case scenario is that division, and I think they're totally capable. We've talked about this. I think the Brewers took a step back, so they're not going to have to worry about them as much. Obviously, the Cubs are still there. Cubs had a down year last year, but I think they still have the talent to be there. The Cardinals as well. But this team has the talent to win the division. So if everything clicks and goes right, I fully expect to see the Reds fighting for that. I think they can make a deep run in the playoffs because most teams that make deep runs have good pitching, and we've established that if everything goes as planned, they got really good pitching. So that's what I think best case scenario is for the Reds.
I'm going to agree is they get the division and they make the NLCS. I think that's their top. They get to the National League Championship this year. Like I said, I don't see anybody touching the Dodgers, but I think if they could get to the National League Championship, that would be unbelievable and is potentially their ceiling. You know, I really do believe it. They could do this. They've got the talent. I really think that they could come up and shock some people. You know, this team finished fourth place last year, so for them to be able to do that in 1 year and one off season would be pretty awesome. And I feel like they've got the potential to do that. So I'm going to go with that as a pretty high ceiling for the Reds, man. So I mean, when you take a team from fourth place and tell people that they can make the NLCS, they've done something right. So I'm a believer. I don't know. I think they could do it. I really do. So what do you think for worst case scenario?
So here's the reality, Reds fan. I wish Kearns was here to rebut me on this, but so I pulled up who they lost and who they gained. And I looked at wins above replacement. And again, that's not the be all end all. There's a lot of other things to take into account, but just looked at that. And based upon what they lost and what they gained, they would be +6 in the win category, which puts them squarely at 500. 500 does not make the playoffs. And again, I think that they're better than that. But what happens if Wade Miley goes back to pre-Houston Wade Miley? You know, that's going to hurt. There's actually a lot of things that can go wrong. What if Joey Votto still doesn't hit? To be a playoff team, Joey Votto has to hit. He has to hit. What if Sonny Gray isn't as good? What if Raciel Iglesias is Raciel Iglesias from last year? You know, a lot of what we're talking about is dependent on these guys getting better and being who they were. And I think there's a very good chance, there at least a chance that doesn't happen. And so worst case scenario is they miss the playoffs. They're a 500 team, which still probably puts them ahead of the Brewers, in my opinion, but squarely in third place.
Third place is the bottom. I agree 100%. You know, the Cardinals and the Cubs could finish above them. They could go third. I don't see the Brewers overtaking them. I really don't. Pirates, no way. So I do think that that's the bottom. And one thing that you brought about Joey Votto, and Kearns made a good point when he talked about him to me. I was talking to him a little bit, and he was saying, Joey Votto is not in a spot, and Joey Votto's an on-base guy. Let's just be honest. His on-base percentage over all these years is ridiculous. It's off the charts. But Kearns was saying that in situations where they need him to drive in runs, he's looking for walks. And it's become a little bit of a problem with Votto. And, is he getting on base? Yeah, but, I mean, in some of these lineup with the Reds, he's been asked to drive in runs and be that guy in the middle of the lineup and just crush the ball and get some ribbies. And he hasn't really been doing that. And his numbers last year, I had to look at them twice. I couldn't believe how bad they were, 260 batting average and 15 bombs and 47 ribbies. That's not even close to what he normally does. And if he doesn't hit, man, like you said, these guys are not they're looking to him to be the guy to lead them to him. Eugenio Suarez, what a season he had last year with 49 bombs and 103 ribbies. Wow, I mean, that guy is unbelievable. And some of these guys in this lineup are pretty studly, and they did a good job, and we'll get into this in the next segment here with their additions. Just loaded themselves up on the offensive end, which they knew that they had a problem there. And but yeah, I mean, I really think that Votto's got to step up this year for sure for them in order to avoid just falling into normalcy at third place.
You know what's worrisome about Votto? He wasn't just bad this year. He was pretty bad, he wasn't just bad last year. He was pretty bad the year before that. So he only had 12 homers. The year before that, he did hit 284, but 67 RBIs from a guy you're paying like $25 million a year or something. That ain't cool. And I agree totally with what Kearns is saying. He's only had in the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, one 100 RBI season. That was 3 years ago, and it was an MVP caliber season. 36 homers, 100 RBIs. He hit 320 that year. But yeah, man, walks are a good thing. But when you need to drive in runs, you need a guy to swing the bat. And hopefully, like I said, maybe a little bit of that was apathy. He was on a bad team that just started out terrible. So maybe now that he's got some guys around him, maybe he'll pick it up.
So what do you got for the position battle? What do you feel is the biggest position battle on this team?
Most of the Reds lineup is set, but I'm going to say this. And this isn't necessarily a position battle, I don't guess, but they're going to have to find time, in my opinion, and a place to play for Nick Senzel. So he was their first-round pick, the fourth-rated prospect in all of baseball 2 years ago. And I can't believe that they're completely giving up on him. I don't know if they're going to use him as just like a total utility player. I don't know if they're going to platoon him in center field. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but I can't believe that they would have given up on him that quick. But, his natural position, I guess, is second base. They signed a guy to play there. He can play a little short and a little third. They've got guys to play there, obviously. He can play in the outfield, but they signed 2 more guys to play in the outfield, and they got to find time for Aquino somewhere, which somehow, from what I'm reading, he's not going to make the opening day roster. That kind of like blows my mind. I think he hit 19 homers last year in just a couple months. And so I don't know if he's just lost it or what. But like I said, not necessarily a position battle. But if I'm a Reds fan, I want them to find a way to play Nick Senzel somewhere.
Yeah, you kind of took one of the ways I could have gone with this, and in that jam that they really got with those 5 guys for 4 spots, really. And that's crazy, Senzel and Aquino can be really big parts of this team, and you can at least plug one of those guys in there and play. And I don't know, man. I think they should find a spot for both of them, to be honest with you. If you're not, maybe Jesse Winkler. I don't know about him if he's gonna fit. He's a good player too, So if he ends up falling off, maybe you throw Senzel or Aquino in there, but. And then one of them you can DH obviously too. So that's a good one, man. That really is. I'm gonna go with. I already talked about. I thought how Amir Garrett should be the closer. I think that's gonna be something to watch. I'll just throw that one out there. I'm not really gonna go with it as the biggest one, but if Iglesias struggles, then you got to look to Garrett. And then the catcher one's pretty interesting too with Tucker Barnhart and Kyle Farmer. Kyle Farmer was really good with the Dodgers, big prospect for them, and. Those 2 are going to battle it out a little bit. Right now, it looks like Barnhart's job to lose, but I like Farmer a lot. So he could steal some starts from Tucker there, or they could go back and forth between the 2 of them. I'm not really sure what David Bell's plans are as far as the catching position 100%, but that's a good one to look at. They both hit similar last year. They're not really that great of hitters. 11 homers and 40 ribbies for Tucker, and 9 homers and 27 for Kyle Farmer. They're not just off the charts hitters and mashing the ball or anything by no means, but it's something to look at for them as well. Is what are they going to do at the catcher position most of the time, and we'll see.
Yeah, and another guy to throw in that mix, which this is going to steal my farm system update away a little bit, but Tyler Stevenson. He is one of their top prospects. He's ready, and I'm with you, man. They need to improve production somehow, some way. Out of that catcher spot, below average definitely last year from that spot, and so I would keep an eye out for Tyler Stevenson as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is pretty deep, right? I mean, when you look at this team, that they got some depth, which is also a strength of theirs. There's some guys that we're talking about here that, like you said, may not even be in the mix for some reason, and. I think it'd be absolutely nuts if Aquino isn't on the roster. I mean, that would be so bad, such a bad decision. That guy ripped it up when he came up, man. He just 19 bombs and I don't know how much. I think 47 games. I think I saw just absolute tear. It seemed like every game he was hitting a home run. And how do you keep a guy like that off the roster, man? I don't get that at all. That when I looked on Fangraphs at their starting lineup, he wasn't on there, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So, not real sure what's going on there, but that definitely needs to change, and he needs to be a big part of this team. So,
the thing I read said he kind of lost it in the spring. I think he went a stretch where he was like 2 for 22, and they were working with him to try to recover, I guess, a little bit from that. But I'm like you, man, like, how do you certainly you're not giving up that quick on him, which maybe he just, needs some adjustments in the minors or whatever. But he seemed like he was tailor-made for that DH spot or one of the outfield spots, put one of those guys at DH. And honestly, me and you talked about a little bit of this off air. It's one of the reasons that made me want to pull back a little bit on my Reds love, so to speak, because I was expecting him this whole time to be in that lineup and expecting, 30 homers. Well, what would have been a 30-homer season from him. And so if you remove that, again, I think the Reds are still good with the moves that they've made, but I was expecting Aquino to be in that lineup and be a part of a big offense. And like I said, for whatever reason, right now, he's not in there.
So I don't know this. I'm not going to say this because I've heard this or anything. This is just a guess, but looking at his batting stance, man, if based off of his batting stance, you could see how he could get thrown off. He's not, a normal type of hitter. He's got a weird stance, and he goes into it and just mashes. So you could see how a guy like that could get thrown off once pitchers kind of figure out how to pitch him a little bit, especially if they're staying away from him a little bit with that stance. Maybe that's what he's trying to adjust with a little bit. Like I said, I haven't heard anything like that, but I could see that being a problem based off of just what I saw from him last year with his batting stance. Just a little bit weird, and maybe at first it works, but as we know, man, hitting a baseball, and to me, is the hardest thing in the world to do when it can do 700 different things. So it's pretty crazy, and we'll see what we get out of him this year. So key ads, David, who's the biggest one? Pedro Strop, Nick Castellanos, Wade Miley, Mike Moustakas. We got Shogo. We haven't talked about him yet. Travis Jankowski, Jose De Leon.
I'm with Mike Moustakas, and the reason is they had Peraza at second base last year, who's a nice fielder, but he didn't hit at all. And so it's, again, looking through the wins above replacement, the biggest jump that they had was from Peraza to Moustakas. Moustakas has proven that he's going to hit 30 to 35 homers a year. They made a shrewd move there by signing him. I think they got him for 4 years. I could have went with Castellanos too, doubles machine, big bat. He's going to play well in that small park as is Moustakas. But I had to go with Moustakas.
Yeah, since you're going with Moose, I'm going to go with Castellanos with the doubles and just right field. He's not a good defender. I will tell you this right now. He does not play defense very well, but he can play the game on the offensive side of the ball. There's no doubt about that. So I think he's a big pickup for them, big add to their lineup. Moustakas and Castellanos adding to this lineup is just huge for them. And if Shogo ends up turning out like they're talking, man, this team could be really fun to watch offensively. And 1 through 9, it could also be a tough group of hitters. Normally a lot of these teams have got 5 or 6 guys that you can count on, and your 7, 8, 9 hitters are, a little weak. But I don't see that very much. There's not too many holes in this Reds lineup, and there's a lot of guys that they can bring off the bench. We talked a little bit about their depth, and so I thought they did a really good job with their additions, and they got a 4-starter out of it too. So they did a good job, they really did. And I thought that they ended up with that. But I'm going to go with Castellanos. I was really impressed with him and really bummed the Cubs couldn't re-sign him so that Hayward could sit the bench, because Hayward just needs to sit the bench and play defense late in the games. But whatever, I'll get off that real quick. But key losses, I got Yasiel Puig, Matt Kemp. It seems like Matt Kemp must have played on 14 teams last year, because I think I've seen that, but he must have been on 3 or 4 different teams because I keep saying his name. Tanner Roark, Kevin Gausman, Jose Iglesias, Alex Wood, and Nick Martini. Who do you think's the biggest loss out of those guys?
I don't think they're going to make those guys too bad, but I think Jose Iglesias is a really underrated player. He actually hit a little bit last year for the Reds. I mean, not much. I'm thinking he hit about 288 with 10 or 11 homers. But Jose Iglesias is one of the best fielding players in the league. And, man, he would have been an awesome defensive replacement. You could play him anywhere on the diamond. I'm assuming – I don't know how well Senzel plays defensively, but I'm assuming that's where Senzel's what he's going to do, kind of be a defensive replacement. And, of course, with Castellanos, they may DH Castellanos and play Senzel in the outfield. I'm not sure what they're planning on doing there. But going back to your point, I think they're going to miss Jose Iglesias more than – people realize, just because he was versatile, great defensive replacement, a great sub. They were having to play him last year as a starter, which was probably a little over his head, but I think they'll miss him.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I don't see any of those other guys being a problem. Yasiel Puig is an interesting one to me a little bit. They had him for a little while last year, and he, he's one of those guys that brings a lot of energy. I got to give him that. I don't think he's very good for your clubhouse. I think he's just kind of a weird guy, to be honest with you. And I think it's very weird too that the Braves signed him, and just because he got the flu or whatever this thing is, that he's off the team now. I just don't really understand that. Like, I don't get why he's just away from the team till he feels better, and then he can help the Braves in right field. That was very strange to me that his contract got voided because of that. I don't get it. I don't understand that. Very weird. I thought it was a good pickup for the Braves, losing Markakis, and I don't know. Anyway, so Freddie Freeman can come back from it, and he had it too, and Puig can't. Yeah, I don't. I'm not even going to get into that. What's that?
I think there's more to that story than what's being told. I don't know if there's another injury or something, or because I'm like you, man. Like, he wasn't going to be out but in a couple of weeks, which would put him like the second week of the season. So there's something else going on there. I always wondered if you put him and Bauer and Votto in the same room, would it be a circular firing squad? You remember the Office episode where they're all pointing guns at each other? They're waiting on the first guy to shoot. Like, what a weird clubhouse mix that would be. But I'm like, something's not right. I don't know what it is. I would love to know what it is from a scout or somebody, because the guy can obviously play. He's been pretty good about wherever he's been. He's a terrific athlete, supposedly good on defense. Something just stinks. Nobody wants to sign him. Of course, it doesn't sound like he really wants to sign anywhere either. The Orioles, were wanting him pretty bad, and he's like, yeah, no thanks. So, I don't know. Something strange about that whole deal. And somehow the Reds turned that into Trevor Bauer. I want to go back to that.
Yeah.
I don't know how they pulled that off, but it was a good move.
Oh, that was a great move. I mean, you could turn that into one of your top pitchers. Probably in my mind, their two guy. Pretty solid on their part, but that whole Yasiel Puig situation is just absolutely weird, and I can't figure it out. I think it's honestly better off without him, to be honest with you. Some of these other guys they got, they don't need him. They didn't need Iglesias. They didn't need any of those guys. So I really don't know exactly who to pinpoint on that one. I'll just say they're all pretty much could just go away. So who do you got for your prospect?
Well, I'm going to go back to Tyler Stevenson. We talked about it a little bit. The Reds' farm system's really bad. 25th is about where I saw them most of the time, 26th, right in there somewhere. They don't really have a lot of players that can contribute now. They do have some interesting pitchers, but after I started looking through their AAA stats and stuff, it doesn't seem like many of those guys are ready. So I'm going to go with Tyler Stevenson. He was the 11th overall pick in the 2015 draft. Already a good defender. They say he's got good hands. Pitchers like pitching to him, which I think is the same way with Barnhart. They just need that offense to come along. He's their third-ranked prospect. I think that's the guy most likely to help them this year. Everybody else is a couple years away.
Yeah, I mean, that's another guy to add to the Barnhart Farmer mix there too, just having that third guy. And we don't really know how the third catcher is going to work out too well in the 60-game season, but I mean, he's definitely up there, and he is one of their better prospects from everything I've been reading too. I'm going to go with Hunter Green, who is one of the most hyped draft picks of all time, really, to be honest with you, when this guy got picked number 2 overall. He's not on pace to be up already. I believe he would have been up this year had it not been for Tommy John. He went through that because he throws 100 miles an hour, and we talked about this in one of our other episodes. Unfortunately, all of them got to go through it at least once, and he's gone through it, and he's back to popping between 97 and 102. So that's good news, and it's good to hear that he's on pace again to get back to playing again, and he's on pace now for 2022 after the Tommy John. So he was probably on pace for the end of this year or beginning of next year full time, but now he's on a 2022 pace. So he got a little setback there, but if he can overcome that, which most people can, and come out there and blaze like he does. He's 6'4", 215. He was the second pick in the draft. Fastball, like I talked about, his changeup's a work in progress, and he's got a wipeout slider. So he's got a lot of good things going for him. He's a really good athlete. He can hit the ball pretty good too, from everything I read. And man, the Reds though only have 2 of the top 100 prospects, and I think we mentioned them both. So that's not good. That's not good at all. And like you said, there's a reason they're 25th or 6th. So not much up the pipeline, but I do think that a lot of that other players on the roster right now are very young. You know, some of this young talent they got on the major league roster is probably why they're kind of stepped back right now. So they do have a lot of young guys on the roster right now that are going to help them. So that's a good thing.
Yep.
So David, what do you got as far as some trivia for me, bud?
You know, this is a shocking one. I hope you haven't been looking at Reds pitchers. You know that's the way I like to go. But I definitely looked in another place to make sure this was correct. Who is the Reds' all-time saves leader?
So immediately you go to the nasty boys, the Dibble, the Charlton, you know, those kind of guys. Dibble more so than the others. You go John Franco a little bit, but he was more Mets. Man, you and your stinking closer questions, man. You were killing me.
If you didn't look at it, you won't get this one because there's no way. I would have never guessed this in a million years.
I should start just studying the reliever of every one of these teams, man, so I can get your trivia questions right. Oh, man, so it can't be Dibble then if you're saying that. So let's go with – man – I don't even know if I can think of like a closer for them for like a long stretch there. That would be the all-time save leader guy. Trying to think back to like the 70s teams when they had like the Big Red Machine and who would their closer have been there, but I cannot even think of their closer on that team, to be honest with you. Oh man, you and your stupid trivia, your relief pitchers. I have no idea, man. Who is it?
All right, I'm pulling up the stats here. Danny Graves.
Danny Graves?
Listen, and it's not just a little amount of saves. 182 saves. Danny Graves had 182 saves. How did we miss how good Danny Graves was? And he might be a Hall of Famer in your book because he had good years right in a row. So listen here, 27, 30, 32, 32, 41. Those are consecutive years. Now, he went through one stretch there where they wanted him to be a starter. That worked out terrible. He came back and became a closer again. That's the year he had 41 saves. And then he, literally was just gone. He kind of bounced around from the Indians, the Mets. But those years he had with the Reds, which would have been 97, part of 97 to 04, apparently Danny Graves was like a big stud closer, and somehow I missed it.
Wow, man. I would have gone with Rob Dibble. I just would have.
Instantly, my mind went there, and I thought about John Franco. I knew they had him for a minute. But, yeah, I thought for sure it would be Dibble. And actually, Dibble was, I think, 3rd or 4th on the list. Franco was ahead of him.
Wow, man. I would have never got that. Danny, I completely forgot about him.
Same.
Completely forgot about that guy. You stink. All right, give me the top 10 home run leaders for the Reds all time.
All right, Johnny Bench.
Number 1.
Yes. Let's see. I want to think that maybe Eric Davis is up there somewhere in the top 10.
Number 10.
Joe Morgan, Pete Rose. No, Pete Rose wasn't really a home run hitter, was he?
Nope.
Was Joe Morgan on the list?
Nope.
I'm trying to think of those Big Red Machine teams because I bet they have several of them. George Foster, was he on there? Is he on the list?
Number 7.
I'm just going to rip through some of those guys. I don't know that much about the Big Red Machine, but I hear guys talk about it all the time. What about Dave Concepcion? Is he on that list somewhere?
He is not.
Okay, I didn't think he was a home run hitter anyway. Let's see here. Joey Votto's got to be on that list.
Number 4.
Ken Griffey Jr. probably on that list.
Number 9.
Let's let's see here. I know I'm missing some really obvious guys here. Who is the guy that played first base for them in the 70s? He has a son who plays now, I think, or used to play. Tony Perez, did he play for them?
Perez is up there, 3.
Okay. All right. I'm going through their outfield. Maybe Chris Sabo on that list towards the end somewhere?
Sabo is not on there.
Okay. I think I could get these if I just sat here and thought about it. Of course, some of these are probably like older players because the Reds, if I'm not mistaken, were the first baseball team, or one of the first anyway.
1869.
1869. So they've got a lot of guys that could probably be on this list. My daughter's playing the piano now just to give us some victory in Jesus or whatever it is she's playing right now. But anyway, I don't know if you can hear it or not. Am I missing some really obvious ones?
Yeah.
Oh, Barry Larkin.
No, that's surprising, though.
That surprises me, too.
That's surprising. He just really wasn't a masher, you know. He was about 20 every year, maybe.
I would have thought he'd have had a couple hundred homers pretty easy, which would put him about on anybody's top 10. So the Reds apparently had some mashers.
A lot of good players in the Reds' history, that's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, give me some of them.
Frank Robinson's number 2.
Yeah, I should have got that.
Adam Dunn, number 5.
I should have got that, man. That's a guy from our era. I should have got that. The big donkey.
Ted Kaczewski's 6. That was a tough one. And then Jay Bruce. Jay Bruce was number 8. Remember old Adam Dunn and Austin Kearns, man? When we were in college, we'd always go watch them play for the Lookouts, man.
Yeah.
Those are some studly teams, man. And
you know, let's just look at this. I'm thinking Adam Dunn had 500 homers. Am I right with that?
no.
Let's look it up. It's close. If he didn't have them, it's close.
He's in the 400s.
All right, let's look it up.
We looked at Adam Dunn because he became Hall of Fame eligible this year, and his numbers are atrocious.
Yeah. So listen, though. Adam Dunn only played 13 years and hit 462 homers. That's an average of 37 a year, DJ. 37 a year. So I'm not saying Adam Dunn's a Hall of Famer by any stretch. Only 17.9 WAR, and that's mostly because he couldn't field at all. But Adam Dunn, man, he had some killer years. He had 5 straight seasons of 40 or more homers. 46, 40, 40, 40, 40. That was all right in a row. Then 32, 38, 38. I don't know, man. That's a masher right there.
Oh, he could mash. I will give you that, but he was also a terrible hitter. Terrible.
He was king of the strikeout for sure. Did not hit for average. Just see what his best average year was. He had a 262 his rookie year. There's a 266 in there. Everything else you look down through here, 219, 220, 212, 204, you know. But he could drive in some runs. He had a bunch of 100 RBI years I'm here looking at. Pretty crazy.
He's very interesting. It was very interesting to look at him when he became eligible because you like, man, let's say, David, he hit, 30 bombs for one more year and got 500. And I mean, what do? You got to throw him in, right? I mean, with even as bad of a hitter as he was. But I really believe since they made 500 kind of the line, and since he was not there and he was such a bad hitter, you just can't do it. I really believe that. If he would have had he'd have hit like 270, 280, something like that, and wouldn't have struck. I mean, strikeouts are Reggie Jackson's the all-time strikeout leader, so I mean that doesn't matter. But
you also
what?
You also had 500 homers though.
True, that's what I'm saying. I know Reggie Jackson and Sammy Sosa are probably 1, 2, or 1, 2, and 3, or they're in that area as far as strikeouts go. And Adam Dunn had a ton of them, but Adam Dunn might be up there too with those guys. To be honest with you, I think he's got to be in the top 5 in strikeouts all time too. So I just can't do it because he didn't have the 500. If he did, I'd have to look a little more close at him and No, man, just couldn't really hit. That's the problem with him, and he was terrible in defense. But a lot of factors that went against it.
He was the King Kong Kingman of his era.
Yeah, so true, so true, man. That's a good, very good comparison, actually. All right, David. So Riverfront Stadium was open until 2002, and the Great American Ballpark opened in 2003 until present. Have you been to either or both?
So, yes, I've been to both. I love Great American Ballpark. I think Great American Ballpark is a very underrated park. It's got a great parking situation, good food. It's a smaller stadium, but it sits, right by the river. Bengal Stadium is right next to it. Their Hall of Fame's kind of sandwiched in between. I've been to Great American Ballpark several times. Actually, me and Kearns and a couple other guys used to take an annual trip there every year for a weekend. We usually catch a Friday, Saturday, Sunday series there. And we had some great memories. Hadn't got to do that. Kids came along. Life kind of changed. We haven't got to do that. And our school, I went to a small Christian school. We do a fundraiser every year. And it used to be that the reward for that trip was a Reds game and Kings Island. And so I've been to Riverfront several times. Riverfront was a pretty crappy stadium, the old turf and all that. It was in that cookie cutter stadium era. But a lot of good memories at Riverfront. The first baseball game I ever saw in person, pro game, was at Riverfront for sure. So a lot of good memories.
Yeah, I'm gonna check yes on both of those as well. Man, Kings Island, that was a great pickup. What a awesome place that is. They got the Beast roller coaster, man. That's a legendary roller coaster there, man. So good call on that. Yeah, I used to work at a camp when I was in high school, Hoosier Hills Baptist Camp down in southeast Indiana there, and we'd go to a Reds game every year, and obviously during that time that was Riverfront, so we'd go every year to that and check that out, and that was a lot of fun. And I'm with you on the new one. That is a very cool ballpark, and I like the fireworks thing that shoots it out, and I like that they're right on the river. I just like a lot about that field. Cincinnati is a cool city. I really like it a lot. I've been there many, many times. And I think, David, to be honest with you, man, besides like Cubs fans and White Sox fans, and man, I don't know if I know, besides maybe the Braves are up there too, but I know a ton of Reds. I got a ton of friends that are Reds fans. I think that's like up there with those three other teams, the White Sox, Cubs, and Braves in my life anyway. I know a ton of Reds fans. So I got a lot of connections with that, and I've gone a lot to Reds games. The Great American, probably been there more than any other ballpark than Wrigley, to be honest with you. And obviously that dump on the south side, I've been there a lot too. But I think that's probably third in the amount of times I've been to a field. I got to go with that one. So I love it. I think it's good. Cincinnati just kind of shuts down at night. It's kind of weird, there's not much going on when it gets dark, and kind of becomes a ghost town, and then back at it the next morning. So very cool. A lot of good memories going to Reds games. And
so how long is Cincinnati for you, DJ?
About 6. Not bad at all, really.
Yeah, we might need to get a family trip together, go to Kings Island, and catch a Reds game. That would be cool.
Man, Kings Island I would love to go back to Kings Island. I haven't been there probably since I was like 20, maybe even before that. Place was awesome. I love it. Like you said, the kids would love it. That'd be a fun trip, no doubt, man. We got all these good vacations figured out in our heads, man. So we know what we're doing if we actually go through with some of them. So
that's right.
Yes, sir. All right, man. Well, moving along. Who's your favorite Red of all time?
So listen, the Reds obviously again are the closest team to me. I've never really been a true Reds fan, but I've followed them. They're probably my National League team, I would say, or up towards the top of my favorite National League teams. I never hate them. But, they've had a lot of great players. Barry Larkin, King Griffey Jr. I mean, like you said, in our era, the Reds have a pretty rich history. But I'm going to go back a little bit into the late 80s and early 90s. DJ, I had my own Mr. Burrell moment. So we – yep. Of course, I was 9 probably, so that made a little bit of difference. I wasn't like 20, but I was. So the first player that I ever got to see up close was my boy Chris Sabo.
Oh,
goggles on, and I remember somehow or another we figured out where the players came out. And so after one of those Kings Island trips with our school, I waited until after the game. And I don't even remember who else we saw. There was a bunch of players we saw. But Chris Sabo walked by and spoke. And I had a ball in my hand, ready to have it autographed, and I totally just froze because Chris Sabo just walked by. So I had my own Mr. Burrell moment. And let me tell you, Chris Sabo won the Rookie of the Year. I didn't realize this, okay? I was little when all this went on. Did you realize Chris Sabo stole 46 bases his rookie year? I had no idea he was a speed guy. Yeah, it's crazy. But he had probably a 6-year really good career and then just kind of rode off into the sunset. But I had the Chris Sabo flat top back in the day. I remember the goggles, and I had my own Mr. Burrell moment. So there you go.
Yes. I can bring that back in your face next time you bring that one up to me. Mr. Sabo, Mr. Sabo. Chris Sabo, man. That guy was a big part of the 90 World Series team, though. I'll tell you that much right now, man. That guy was awesome that year. And I'm going to stick with the guy that it was on that team as well. I've always loved Eric Davis, man. Mm-hmm. Always loved Eric Davis. He's center fielder. Just always been my guy for the Reds, no doubt. There's a lot of Reds players I could have gone with here. He's always been my guy for them. 282 career homers, 269 average, 1430 hits. You know, not a Hall of Fame player by any means, but just a really good player and good defender. And man, you could do his stance in the backyard too. It's pretty cool. And
if you didn't slap your glove a couple times out there at BP, you weren't a baseball fan.
Well, I loved Eric Davis. I'm gonna go with him. And man, Barry Larkin too. When I used to play shortstop when I was a kid, Barry Larkin was one of the guys. It was pretty much like Barry Larkin, Ozzie Smith for his defense, Cal Ripken. Those were the shortstops like you looked up to and would emulate. And I remember, man, my uncle would hit me ground ball on Eastern Avenue in Aurora, and we had a long street. And that thing get by you would chase it for like a mile, it seems like, just get your ball back. And you would pretend like you're Barry Larkin, and one would go through my legs, and I'd go after running, go get it. That thing is the only ball we had. So we didn't have buckets of balls like we do now. We just had one ball on the bat, and we would play with that thing all the time. So, Barry Larkin, Ken Griffey Jr., you got to love the Nasty Boys. I loved Paul O'Neill.
Yes, sir.
And I loved how much of a competitor he was, just completely a competitor. Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, a lot of big baseball names the Reds have had over all the years. And a lot of different ways you can go there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. So former teammates, what do you got?
So we got Jason Hart, Jim Rulepaw. Let's see, who else would have been a Reds fan? We had several from that Cincinnati area, and I think about guys in school there as well. Ricky Taphorn was a Reds fan. Who am I missing on the team? I know I'm missing somebody else.
I don't think so. I think you nailed it too.
So I was in Phillips' dorm, and like I said, there was at Milford Baptist Church, or First Baptist Church in Milford. That's where Jim Rulepaw came from. Kyle Melton was from there. All these guys that were Reds fans. They were all annoying. None of them could drive. No, I'm just kidding. But we definitely had some Reds fan contingency there at Temple.
Yeah, we did. I think Rodney Washburn was a guy that was there before you got there. Rodney, I don't know if you know him or not, but he was from the Cincinnati area too. So that's 3 that I came up with on the old Reds list. But, man, old Jim Rulepaw was a good player for us and just a monster of a human being. That guy is huge. And
the best nickname ever. I don't know who gave him that nickname, but the Big Tater.
The Big Tater, man. And he had a big tater, and he could hit the ball, and he batted clean up a lot for us and played first. And easy target for our infielders to throw the ball over to that man because he was really big. And I haven't seen Jim in a really long time. I know he's if I'm not mistaken, he's going to be a assistant coach in college here, I think, coming up here with what's that school down in South Carolina, that Christian school? I can't remember. Bob Jones. Yep. Bob Jones is where he's going to possibly go. I don't know if he's going to end up doing it or not, but Yeah, that's good for him. And man, he was a good guy to play with. And Jason Hart was a fun teammate and a little sarcastic. He had a little sarcastic. He got in trouble with some of the older guys, the veterans. Like he'd run his mouth a little too much. I remember a lot of times having to have those guys back off him because they wanted to fight him. And
I always wondered if Jason Hart was a serial killer. He just kind of, he was, like you said, he was sarcastic, but we actually became really good friends. Him and Matt Locklear were roommates, just a door or two down from me there one year. And Jason was a cool guy. I think he's living in Georgia now. And so he got rid of his Yankee, Ohio roots and became a Southern boy. I hope you watch this, Jason, because I know this is making you mad. But anyway, we got to become pretty good friends. I think we were on the same floor like 3 of the 4 years I was there or something crazy. So he's a good dude.
yeah, Jason and Matt were actually my roommates for one semester as well. Jason was a good dude. I really liked him. And like I said, man, he played second for us, some. And I don't know, he just didn't stick around too long in the baseball world with us. But, I just have a lot of stories of him just mouthing off to some of the veterans on that team, man. And I'm just thinking to myself, he's going to get himself killed, man, because he would run his mouth. And then, he tried to be like, I was just kidding kind of thing. And they weren't having it. So he got himself in the doghouse a lot. But like you said, man, he was a real good friend of mine too. And hung out with him a lot and a good guy. And I miss him, man. I hardly ever talk to that guy. I talk to Jim a lot, but I don't hardly ever talk to Jason Hart. So, and Rodney, I don't even know if he's alive, to be honest with you. I haven't heard from that guy since we left Temple, so I have no clue. But just had to give a little love to our former teammates there. But yeah, man, there's a lot of Red fans in my life. I got a lot of guys that I know that are big fans. So shout out to Josh, Jimmy, Dion, Devin, Jason, Logan, Brent, and all the other guys I forgot that are Reds fans in my life too. So hopefully this 2020 season is a big one for you, and you guys win a lot of ball games, except for you can't win the division. Well, David, you got anything to add, buddy, before we get off here?
No, I guess I'll have to do a little shout out to Mr. Matt Kearns. Matt gave me a Reds polo last year, and I didn't even think about wearing it until I sat down and I saw DJ's Reds hat. But Matt, like I said, we've been to a bunch of games together. He's one of the reasons I started following the Reds. And so we were hoping he could be on this episode, but he's beaching it. I don't blame him. But a little shout out to Mr. Kearns there.
Good deal, man. So with that, we'll wrap up the Cincinnati Reds. Should be a pretty fun season for them, no doubt. A lot of talent there in Cincinnati this year. Great place to go watch a game if you want to go watch one. Obviously, you probably can't do that this year, but in the future, hopefully we get back to normal and can do that. So, yeah, with that, David, we'll sign off. And good luck to the Reds getting second place this year and making the wild card. So we'll go from there. All right? All right, David, have a good one, buddy.
See ya.